2, 1. Let's go. Welcome to the Fiction Addiction Podcast, a podcast where we go one-on-one with fiction creators, such as authors, filmmakers, actors, songwriters, and more. Each episode, we get the inside scoop on our guests' creative process, the ups and downs of their industries, and our guests also give out tips and tricks that help them become successful. And now, let's jump into the episode with your host, Chris C.L. Lowry.
All right, my next guest was born and raised in the Chicagoland area. At the age of 10, she began writing books of poetry and then transitioned to writing screenplays in high school. After that, her writing slowed down, but she was reacquainted with her love of writing after the birth of her son, Malcom. In her debut children's book, Miracle Malcom, she showcases her talents to the world as an author in hopes of inspiring, educating, and spreading positivity to those around her. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Ariel Simmons to the Fiction Addiction Podcast. Ariel, thank you for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going
to... I appreciate you allowing me to speak, especially about something I'm super passionate about.
All right, yeah, definitely. So we're going to jump into your story first.
Okay.
Your writing journey began at a young age. Looking back now, what was the inspiration for your writing?
So back then, especially, I think I was like... even before 10, I know 10, I really got serious, but even prior to that, honestly, I think me being super interested in and having a love for English and spelling, so just having a love for writing in general kind of piqued my interest and made me want to figure out what I could do, regarding writing and how I could kind of have my own take on putting my own words together and creating my own stories. So just loving English and spelling and all in those subjects that really allow you to be creative and creative writing, it started from that point.
So how was school then with those subjects and being passionate about it that young? I'm sure it had to be simple. You know what I mean? Right? Like,
honestly, yes. Even to this day, I love English. I love spelling. I love writing. Those were my top subjects. Those were the subjects that I excelled the most at because I was super interested in reading and writing and trying to figure out and connect the stories. It was always so easy to connect everything and make sense of everything when it came to writing and English and spelling. It came easy. Now the other subjects, that's a whole nother story.
So poetry. What was it about poetry at the age of 10 that attracted you to that specific type of writing?
I think just really playing around, honestly. I think I wanted to challenge myself in a different way. And I remember taking a Latin course. I took a Latin course and I believe I was 10. I was around that age and I took a Latin course and just kind of diving into such a new, different language. I think because, especially with that being my first foreign language that I was being introduced to, that really kind of piqued my interest in a weird way because it allowed me to want to know, okay, what else, what could I do and how could I be more creative? And it just really led to me writing more and writing poetry. Poetry because I was able to be creative and showcase myself in that type of form. That's what caused me to really dive more deeper into that.
So how was that for like your parents when you told them you were interested in writing and poetry? What were their reactions to it?
My mom loved it. She was the one that was there and involved, and she absolutely loved it. I remember as I progressed, my school at that time, they started it was like a poetry club kind of, and it allowed us to put our work into a book. So that was my first time that I was able to showcase my talent. It was in a book. It it was on sale. So that was like the first time that, my talents was really showcased, and my mom was super excited and would read it, show it off to everybody when family gatherings and friends. So I could tell she was super excited and she wanted me to continue it and just, really encourage me to keep it going.
Wow, that's crazy. So you transition to writing screenplays in high school, which is a big transition. That's from poetry to screenplay.
That's huge, right?
So, like, how was that even that? Because screenplays now, as an adult, is difficult. So how was that in high school?
It was pretty amazing, honestly, and not one part of it was challenging. So I had
Mm,
what introduced me to it was I had an English course, and it was actually speech, and my favorite subject in high school because everything was like um a way for me to excel more and expand my writing and do so much with my writing. And I was put to the test when we were reading this book called Monster, and we had to choose, did we want to what we wanted to do to put our take on finishing the book. So we finished the book, but she's like, okay, go ahead and put your take on it. And I wrote a whole screenplay, and she was blown away. She's like, I mean, I have to give you an 8. I don't know what else to give you because you just sat here and wrote a whole screenplay
wow.
out, based on the book. And after that, I got heavily involved in my drama club and was writing for different parts of the plays that we would do and giving my take on those. So it just was super, it came super natural to me, and you think back, like now, even thinking back, I'm like, man, as you're growing, you're like, man, what talents do I have? What do I have to contribute to the world? And now I'm like, I had all these talents looking back, and you just don't know
Yes.
until you
You're
reflect.
right. So that assignment, it wasn't even to put it into a screenplay.
No.
You just chose to do it.
Yep.
So what made you choose that format for that
I
for that
got
assignment?
inspired because of how the book was set up. So the book was kind of set up where it would allow you to take a step back and then go. It was kind of set up like a movie. So I played off of that. I played off of the setup of the book, and then I just put my own spin on it, using certain dialogue like cut to, and the certain lingo that happens in actual movies. I put my take on it and just ran with it and was super inspired by how I wanted the book to finish myself, and it just drove me to create the screenplay. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was a total of 15 pages maybe.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah. So it was
That's a
intense.
lot.
It was, yeah. And that's something I regret that I don't have at this exact moment, because I talk about it. I bring it up as a moment that I'm super proud of, but I don't have it to show, which I regret, but I have, other things to show, but that would have been amazing
Oh yeah,
to still have
definitely.
that.
So are you still dabbling in screenplay writing, or
I'm sorry.
are you still dabbling in that area and writing screenplays?
Oh no, no, just because my focus and my passion has like created a whole new, like, it's on a whole new level. So I haven't even dipped back into it since high school.
To break down that level in terms of your creativity right now, yeah, in your thought process of what you want to create.
So now I think, especially with where I am right now, I think I'm just kind of on this wave of a children's book right now, especially, regarding my son and being inspired by that. So I think I'm gonna ride this wave for as long as I can with the children's book and creating
Right.
around that format until something else comes up to where I feel like I should take another route.
Okay. Okay. So it says your writing slowed down for a while. What
Mhm.
was that like intentional? Was it unintentional? Was it life? Was it just growing up and being interested in other things? Like what happened up until, and when was your son born? A year?
He was born in 2017.
2017. So 3 years ago,
October.
3 years ago. Oh, October what?
October 30th, actually, the day before Halloween.
Okay, shout to all the Scorpios out there.
Right.
So what caused the break, or what happened during that time that slowed down the writing?
I want to say just life. It was a mixture of just, growing up, figuring myself out, going through just life and trying to figure out, what I really have to offer to the world, and trying to figure out if writing was really a passion. And I think I let it I let it kind of die away because I got into modeling, and I just created, or I had other interests that peaked, and I just, took advantage of the opportunities that came with modeling, and just other career opportunities that really just got my focus off of writing, and just ultimately being uninspired because, you know, I just felt like if I don't have anything to write about, if I don't have a purpose, it's going to be pointless and it's not going to be my best.
That's crazy. So then you got back into writing. So once you started back up at writing, obviously, as an adult now, what was the goal in terms of when you picked that pen back up? Was it as soon as your son was born? Was it working on your children's book, Miracle Malcom, or was it sometime before that?
It was actually after he was born and when he was home. So I was so like kind of numb and dealing with the healing of him being born early, being born prematurely, that my whole mindset was like clouded when he was born and even months after. So my writing the children's book didn't start until he was healthy out of the hospital, home from the NICU, and I was an actual stay-at-home mom. That's when I got inspired to actually write the book.
Okay, so let's break down that
Yeah.
moment of your life. So,
hmm
obviously you mentioned he was born premature. How early?
So he was born about 3 months early, honestly. So October, November. Yeah, so about 3 months early he was born. I had him at 25 weeks. He was due in February, on February 10th to be exact. He came October 30th. So about 2.5 months early he came. Um, and he spent 3 months in the NICU.
Mm. So
Yeah.
that 3 months, was that
hmm
did you have, obviously you're a first time mom at that point, did you have
Right.
people who to lean on to talk to about the experience? And obviously the doctors, they give you
hmm
the medical advice and the possibilities and everything like that, but outside of the doctors, did you have somebody to talk to regarding that was in a similar situation that had a child early as well?
Honestly, at that moment, and this might sound, selfish or what have you, but aside from my family being there, of course, for the support, I really was not even interested in even talking about it. I just wanted to get through it and just kind of deal with it on, not even on my own, but in my own way, so
Right.
to speak. So I did, of course, lean on my boyfriend and my mom, his mom, and that immediate support, as well as the social worker that's given to us to help us along the way. So I did lean on the support, but I honestly didn't start leaning on other moms or other preemie moms and moms in my similar situation until really recently, like this
Mm.
year recently. And just because I think I needed to still heal, and that the book helped me heal, but I needed to still face some situations and or face the reality of that situation, and um heal on my own before I could even begin to talk about it. And it, in a way, it embarrassed me. It made me feel like, okay, why did I go through this? And I just wanted to be prepared for the conversations that I did have when they happened.
Right. So you picked up the pen, you're home, your son comes home, and you're just being a parent, and then you was it a thing of you wanted to share the story, or what was the motivation behind writing the book?
So initially, I wanted to write it for myself. So I initially started to write Miracle Malcolm. Didn't even have a title at this point. But I knew I was writing for myself. I knew because any moment in my life that I did write, it was for a reason. And, it was for a deeper reason than me just wanting to write. I've always felt the passion behind it. I've always felt the need to write for something. And this, because it was triggered all over again at this time, I wanted to write for myself at this point because I felt like I needed healing and I was too prideful to really talk about it at this time with anyone other than myself and how I knew I could handle it and deal with it in my way. So this book started off selfish for selfish reason and ultimately finished with wanting to help other moms in my situation, help other families, spread premature awareness, um, and provide as much help and support to others that I could through this book.
So what made you choose the format you did in terms of putting it in a children's book rather than like a nonfiction, like a memoir type book for like enroll in putting yourself as the character instead of your son? What made you choose a children's book with your son as the main character and him being the focus?
That's a great question, and that's awesome that you asked that because I don't get asked that, and it, even allowing myself to think about that. But I know for a fact that I wrote Miracle Malcolm in a children's format because kids need as much awareness as adults. We have so many books for parents and parent guide and how to do this as a parent and certain tips for parents, but kids need just as much awareness and to be educated about certain things at an early age so that when they do grow up and they, as they do get older, they are aware of certain things throughout their growing a toddler life. So instead of springing it onto them and them learning about it when they're an adult, I felt that it was needed to talk to kids about certain things, especially about premature awareness at a young age, because that the young ages are when the bullying starts and the curiosity peaks, and so many things happen with children that as they get older they react or they'll respond, and kids are brutally honest, so they will say what they want to say because they're not aware. So if you're aware, especially at a young age, then you know how to handle certain situations, when someone doesn't look like you or when someone's a smaller size than you, and when someone is unhealthy as a kid, and these are things that could happen based from premature birth, from being born premature. So this was my way of giving this to families, giving this to moms so that they could educate their kids at an early age and just prep them for the possibilities as their children gets older.
That's nice. That's nice. That's nice. I'm gonna break down this book real quick because when I I don't know what I expected, but it exceeded expectation. You know what I mean? Just looking at the cover. So I'm looking at this cover. I'm seeing the title Miracle Malcolm. I'm seeing the synopsis. I'm like, okay, this is going to be. I don't know what I expected. So I don't know. I just expected a different type of story, but
right.
And then I see this beautiful black character on the front. I'm like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, thank you.
So when then I open the book and then the story, the format of the story, the way you approached it, the narration of the story you did it from your son's perspective.
Yes.
That's what surprised me. And even like you said, you want to inspire, you want to educate, and you do this in this book. And even by not only the images, like it's so many. So this book for me has positive imagery and has positive message. It has the premature birth awareness. It has a main Black character, which is definitely important for our children. It is a children's book, and it has pictures of, like I said, it's from your son's perspective. It has pictures of a supportive Black family in the book, and it has happiness and joy, and it brings a sense of normality to the readers. The way you word everything, the way you make us picture each step, each step of that process. So what made it's amazing because when a child reads this and they're introduced to premature birth, like a young kid, not knowing what it is, and even me as an adult, I know about it, but you don't know about it. You know what I mean? You don't know the process. You don't know the steps. You don't know how long. Children are in the NICU and things like that. But you don't know. But reading that 3 months, you know what I mean? That's a very, very long time. And then seeing it from his perspective, saying my parents were there all the time. I don't want to give too much of the book away because I want people to go definitely go out and get it. But it's from his perspective, and it's not only heartwarming, but it's so positive, and it's so educating that I even learned from it. Like, wow, that whole experience. So, what made you write it in that format rather than say third person?
Right, and thank you so much for that feedback. That really makes me feel good. That makes me just super excited to even keep it going. But I wrote it in that format. I wrote it in that way. I wrote it with everything that you just mentioned in mind, because I'm like, at the end of the day, these are children, even though, the parents are going to be reading to them. If they're toddler age, they could possibly understand and read something, but ultimately the parents are reading to them. However, this book is for the children. This book is for the kids to be able to understand and grasp the concept of what's really happening. And I chose it to keep it in that tone, that format, because although it's something sensitive, I still want families to get hope from this. I still want families to understand that this is a sensitive, emotional, scary, even time, but it doesn't have to be. This, you create the joy out of the situation. This is what it could turn into, if you just keep pushing forward and you just, have that hope and that positivity. Because if you notice the tone throughout the book, it's the because I'm Miracle Malcolm, and it just keeps, that tone of this happened, but I'm this, and that's how I chose to write it, with that in mind, because I want parents to understand that it happened, but it gets better. So
Oh yeah, that's deep right there. Let's talk about premature birth awareness. Do you believe there's enough of it out here?
It is not. It is so not. And I didn't know about it prior to having my son premature. I wasn't even aware that there was this whole world. Like there's a whole world. There's a whole day acknowledged for premature awareness. There's several days that pick apart that one day and branch off into other premature awareness activities, and it's just so much surrounding premature awareness that I had no idea about. So if I didn't know at that time, then how many others in our community and around us that don't know? So that in itself is what ultimately really drove me to push this as hard as I can, because I'm like, you don't know until you know. And if you don't know, you're not going to even think about trying to figure it out, because you don't know that it exists, or you don't know to what extent it exists. So yeah.
Are there many stories about premature birth out there?
There are a few, as I definitely did my research to see what my competitors were
Mm-hmm.
at that time, just to see, who else is out there that's that I could be competing with. But even aside from that, just doing research to see what exists for children in, a children book form, what exists out there. And it's literally a handful. So it's not
That's
even a
crazy.
big market. Yep. It's like you could count on your hands how many books are out there.
That's crazy. So going back to your story, your format, the point of view from Malcolm's perspective, as a parent, it seems like every month is a new story for children because they're always learning so
Right.
fast. They're picking up habits. When did you know the story was ready? Because I'm sure it was like you could have written 1,000-page book, you know what I mean, on his life so far. So
Right.
when did you know the story was ready?
That's another great question because you're absolutely right. I could have definitely kept writing as I wanted to, but I had to pace myself and I had to stop, and because I'm a person that gets super excited and want to spill everything at once, but I had to pace myself because I had to think long term. I had to tell myself, Ariel, this is something that you want. As I got serious about it, especially after I finished, I stopped where I did because I'm like, okay, you have plans for this to track his life. You have plans for, when you want to do another one or, what have you. So I knew I needed to stop at some point because of when the next one would pick up. And there, just thinking long term in my head, I'm like, okay, just pace yourself, stop here and just, let this be an introductory book and take it from there. So it just, just stopping at the appropriate time, which ultimately made so much sense because that's when he came home, and that's when my writing began. So I really just stopped it when I knew I got everything out that I could and up until he came home.
All right. So I think you just actually answered my next question. So
Oh, okay.
can we expect a series from Miracle Malcolm?
Yes, that's definitely what it's gonna be. It's gonna be a series to track his life. And when I say his life, I literally mean up until, I get to a point where I feel like he could take it over, or it's turning into something so big to where, it branches off to a whole nother thing. So we literally have a whole roster set for Miracle Malcolm already that we're super excited to, like I said, pace ourselves and announce as appropriate and really, give information when it's ready and when it makes sense.
Yeah, I can see it. Like, and literally, you're anticipating and you're waiting just to see because it's like a journey. It's like we're going on a journey with you. You know what I mean? To see how
Yes,
things turn
yeah.
out, just everything. But it's definitely dope. So,
Thank you.
now you have a 2-year-old.
Oh my
He's
God. Yeah.
reading. He's picking books up. How is it when he sees himself in that book?
He just looks at it and I'm always like, who is that? Who is that? And I'm like, Malcolm, and he just repeats. He's at this repeating age now, so he repeats everything. But Malcolm, this kid, he's amazing for one. And Malcolm's willingness and want to learn already. Malcolm is smart as heck. This boy he amazes me every day. He's extremely smart. His want to read, Malcolm enjoys reading. So I'm just like overjoyed right now with, my passion and just seeing how he is at this young age. He's so hungry to learn, and it just reminds me so much of myself, especially for this particular subject, and just seeing how he is taking interest into it already. It's like I'm a proud mom.
So when was the first time you introduced the book to him? When was the first time you showed it to him? And
When we got it, like literally
oh, yeah.
when my when my publisher sent my first copy, and I couldn't, it's a feeling you can't even describe because here I am going through this whole process of writing it. I'm working through this whole thing, and in the mail comes the final copy, and it just was it was an amazing feeling, like outer body experience. And to share this with my son, who is the reason for it all, it was just it's unexplainable. But you know, his smile, just like the picture on the book, his smile just lights up, and you know, it was almost as if he was proud himself just to see him on the cover, you know, even though he doesn't know, but it's like that smile is what tells it all.
And now, that same moment, obviously, we just
Mhm.
heard your experience as a parent author. How was that
Mhm.
receiving your first book, physical copy, just as a writer in general, based on your
Man,
background from being from that 10-year-old girl that had that book
right?
showing to that point?
I'm getting all like giggly over here. So it's like it was amazing because nothing aside from, you know, my screenplay being printed off the computer and, you know, the my first few poems being put into the book, this was on a whole new level. This was a whole new experience because it's on a more professional level. And now, as introverted as I am or as I can be, this is out to the public. This is for real. This is like no joke. So it makes me feel even more accomplished from what I know I can offer and what I know my talents are. This takes it to a whole new level. So it's a whole new level of being proud and being excited and being and just putting myself out there in a whole new way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Speaking of that, just since you mentioned it, putting yourself out there, how
Mhm.
was there ever a time where you had a sense of reluctancy of whether you should put yourself out there and
Ooh.
feeling vulnerable, just sharing that story? You know what I
Yes.
mean? Because it's so personal.
My goodness. Yes, 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 yes. Like, yes. There was so many because honestly, again, I am regardless of the pictures that, you know, people see and the type of like the modeling I did and the how it may come across online, I am extremely like I'm an introvert, introvert to the T. Like I love being, you know, doing my own thing. I'm a homebody. I love just interacting with the same people. Like newness is
Wow.
intimidating at first to me. It takes a lot to put myself out there, and when I do, it's a huge step out of my comfort zone. So this, you know, to do this to put myself out there, and honestly, I forced myself to do a lot of these things, and not in a negative way. It may sound negative, but I literally push myself beyond, you know, because I know my potential. So I push myself and force myself in a way to level up. You know, I got to push myself to the next level, but it's going to take me coming out of my comfort zone. So I do all of these things. I've done the modeling, I do, you know, the events and worked with so many people and do the writing and interact the way I do on social media and off social media because I'm pushing myself to my potential. I'm pushing myself to be the woman, the business owner, the author, the creator of, you know, anything artistic around me. I'm pushing myself to be her. So in order to be her, I have to push and I have to get there, and that's going to only happen outside of my comfort zone.
Right. It definitely, especially in today's age. So you went from
Seriously.
a writer to an author. And I had this
Mhm.
discussion with shout out to author Untamed. I had this discussion with her as well.
Nice. Yeah.
Authors are like now, because of social media, we're like dumped in that entertainer category as
Mhm.
well. How is it now, especially with like you say, your personality, you're an introvert. How is it now knowing you have to be visual? You know what I mean? You have to show yourself. You have to tell
Right.
your story. You have to show up the book events. They like people want to meet you. Like, how is that
Right.
now? Like, how is that life now going from a writer when just doing it for yourself to now being an author where you have to put yourself out there in a sense?
I think because I've prepped and conditioned myself so much over the years and kind of psyched myself and just hyped myself up for everything that comes with all of this, especially with with modeling. Honestly, modeling gave me that opportunity to get used to and comfortable in my own skin, and allowed me to open up in a whole new way. So by the time that I even got to this point, even though, yeah, sometimes I do get iffy about certain things still, but I think I'm still at a further enough point in my life now where I'm not as intimidated. So I'm okay with, doing what I have to do to make sure that the end result is a success,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to something like this, like the book.
So once you uh published the book, you got your book. What was the feedback from like your family and friends about the book and about your writing journey?
Amazing feedback from like literally everybody. My boyfriend was ecstatic to see the final project, his mom, my mom. I think everybody was like, oh my God, you did this. And it was like a surreal moment at first because it was, it goes from you talking about it on the daily or,
Yeah.
making mention that this is what you're doing to weeks, months, down the line, here's the final product. And to see it, it was like a aha surreal moment because it's like, oh wow, you were serious. You actually did this. And I was extremely vocal with, sometimes only me and my boyfriend knew exactly what was happening. I didn't really share as much detail with a lot of people just because, this is something so sacred, so precious that I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to really make sure it was right before, it got to a point where I was ready to really full on talk about it.
So outside your family and friends,
Hmm.
have you done like book expos and readings and things like that yet?
No, not yet, but it's something I definitely plan to.
All right, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure you're gonna meet a bunch of people that with this type of story. But I'm sure through
Hmm.
social media you met these type of people that could share similar stories.
Yes,
Um,
for sure.
how is that knowing that because of your journey, you're exposing other people to, like I said, the same vulnerability you had, and now you building
Hmm.
a connection with the reader who shares the same exact story, and they
Right.
can relate to your story. How is that meeting somebody like that and knowing that your book like sparked that confidence in them as
Oh my
well as a parent?
gosh. Exactly. So I can't even tell you how many relationships I've built online with moms that are going through the same thing, how many friend requests, how many emails I've gotten, DMs. And it's been an outpour, and it still is an outpour of love and constant admiration for my transparency and for my vulnerability. That it's something I extremely I take to heart, and I literally hold it because this is the to get the feedback, from those moms and those families that are going through this a similar situation, to get that feedback, that excites me to a point where I want to keep this going for them, especially, because this is ultimately, in addition to myself, these are the people that I wrote it for. And I built these connections. I literally have about three moms that I check in with, and we talk, and we build a connection, and we
Mm.
built the connection based off of them reaching out to me when they saw me put out the book. And so it's to get the feedback, to get, the reactions, to see people inquire about it, and to even ask a question about it. It makes me feel amazing because this is just it started off just like my dad would say, it started off as intellectual property, and it is now something that could impact the world. So I
Mm-hmm.
just will be forever grateful for any inquiry or any feedback regarding the book.
All right, so that connection you talked about with those other moms, and how
Hmm.
important is that for not even a parent of, because I don't want to separate it, but you know what I mean, a parent of a
Right.
premature a child who was born premature is the same as a parent of, how important is that connection for parents, period?
I think it's extremely important because parenting is challenging. It is, and it's just the real about it. It's a challenging time. Of course, it's rewarding. It's precious. It's special, but it's challenging because, like it's been told to us, there's no handbook, there's no rule book, there's no
Hmm.
blueprint. So to connect with another mom, another parent in any form on a common ground and share tips and share our life experiences and just come together as a venting, and just lean on each other for support. I think that it makes the journey that much more easier, and it takes a village. It takes that teamwork to build up and to put somebody else's insecurities at ease and to let them know that you are doing a good job. No matter if you had a bad day this day, you are still doing a good job. You're still a good mom. You're still a good parent. So I think just having that support in general, it's priceless because you could not get it, and there are people out here unfortunately that don't have it. So to get it, it's precious.
Mm. So you're going say you go back to
Mhm.
2018. You got the younger version of yourself. You got the younger version of your boyfriend. You guys just had a baby that was born premature. You're
Mhm.
in there. You're dealing with it. You're a week in. You're a month in. You're 3 months in. You're 4 months in. You're 5 months in. There are parents out there that are in the same situations you guys were, and you have a
Mhm.
chance. Say you have a chance. They're listening and they're inspired by your story. What advice would you give those young parents who are just stepping into a situation like this, or any parent in general?
Honestly, the best advice, as cliche as it might sound, is to literally dig your heels in and push through because it's so easy to get caught up in your emotions. And I literally have to give thanks, and I have so much respect for my boyfriend during this time because having a baby in general, not even a premature baby. So that was added trauma that I felt like I experienced. But having a baby is life changing. It changes your moods, and I'm especially speaking personally, it changed my mood. It changed, certain things within myself. It caused me to be more emotional. So to literally push through certain phases and push through the the moments that just literally, take you off course, and having an accountability partner, I think is just so important. So literally that just the push through of allowing yourself to feel, but not allowing yourself to get stuck in those feelings. And
Mm,
everything is a phase. To just be self-aware and know that everything is a phase. It's okay to feel, but again, that I do wholeheartedly believe, now that I'm out of, and I feel like I'm at a point where I am healed. I do know just pushing through and acknowledging my emotions, but not allowing myself to be stuck in them is so crucial. So just again, having my boyfriend there to hold me accountable, it really helped me to push through even more.
mm. It's deep. So back to your writing.
Mhm.
You are a brand new parent. You're writing. You're someone who had this passion, and you have this. You started penning this amazing story. This story that is
Mhm.
so deep to you, that is so personal to you. Now, you have the task of finding the perfect person to illustrate it.
Yes.
Explain that process. How was that,
Yes.
knowing that you had a story that's going to inspire so many people? So it had to be right, and I'm sure, and especially putting your son in it, especially putting you in it, your boyfriend in it. You
Yeah.
knew it had to be right. So how did you
Yes.
find the right
So
illustrator?
it's so crazy because that question gets asked a lot as well, because people are always blown away about at the illustrations and at how accurate they are and how to the
Oh
T
yeah.
they are to us. And so it's crazy because I've never I've never even personally, like in person, met my illustrator. So I know his sister, and I met his sister doing promotional work. And we met, we began talking, and I opened up to her that I was writing the book, and we just kind of went from there. And as we were discussing, she's like, "Oh, that's crazy. My brother does, artwork. He's an illustrator." I was like, "Oh, okay." Didn't think of it then, but that's where at least the idea to even reach out to him came from, because when I was at a point of being ready, have the manuscript, and I'm just at a point where I'm researching publishing companies and trying to figure out my next step. My next step was to get the illustrator to illustrate the whole book and then proceed with the publishing company. So I reached out to him because I didn't have anyone else in mind. Like, I hadn't even known where to start, and I didn't want to just go off of Instagram and choose an illustrator. So I reached out to him. His name is Tyree. Reached out to him and literally got to work. And he, of course, there was revisions needed. There was a lot of, I felt that I was being extremely anal, but I had to, because, you know, I needed a great product in the end. And he, he really executed very well, ultimately, but it took some time.
So explain that process for writers who don't know, and like I say, this is different because it's not like a animal character or something generic. Like
Right.
the shout out to Tyree, what is it,
Right.
Tyree Bowman? Shout out to the illustrator Tyree Bowman, because they are on point. The illustrations are spot on. They are
Thank
good.
you.
So that process, like I said, like you said, there were revisions. They weren't right. So just explain to that
Mhm.
writer. So like, was it a sit down thing? You say guys never met. So was it just like a communication thing, like emails? Was it phone calls? And um, eventually, how did you
It was
guys
all of that.
get to the same page?
Yes, it was literally all of that. Like I said, I've never even met him in person. He ended up moving out of state. He now lives in Arizona, but he moved out of state in the like during the whole process of us, working and him doing my illustrations. He moved. So, but his communication was always on point. It was just trying to figure out my needs. And, as vocal as I thought I was, I know sometimes I could be all over the place because I'm a passionate talker. So I talk about everything. But I try to be as visual in my writing as possible and get my point across. But we kept missing the mark. I'm pretty sure I got on his nerves because I called him all the time. Always had meetings that after my 9 to 5, I'm like, "Hey, are you free?" I try to fit in conference calls on my lunch break. So just really staying on top of it with him, even to a point where if I felt like when I would read his emails, if I felt like he didn't understand, I was calling him. So it was always like being on top of it, and he would sketch up something. I'm like, no, that's not it. That's not, that's nowhere near it. So we really, we really just had to do a lot of understanding each other. And, he was extremely sweet, extremely understanding, extremely, you know, um, he was wanting to do his best because, and I could tell because of how passionate he was for what he was doing it for. So he felt more like, it's like he had a duty as well. Yes, he wants to do the illustrations, but he wanted to do them just as good, if not even better than what I wanted him to do. So
Mm.
he ultimately pushed through, and I think honestly, I think I pushed him to another potential to reach, for himself within himself. And I think we ultimately learned a lot about each other during that time frame. But it started off with hand sketches, and I told him, I'm like, "No, I don't want hand sketches. I want digital." So he
Oh,
really,
okay.
yeah. So what you guys are seeing, or what you guys have is the digital artwork that was converted to that format so that it could fit the children's book. But which takes more time. It's more of a tedious process, and you don't really see a lot of digital artwork, and because it is time consuming, it is
Hmm.
expensive, and but it's how my vision was, so I needed it to be executed.
Right, definitely. So you said something very important just now. You said um he wanted it to be just as good as you wanted it. Like he wanted the same thing.
Mhm.
So for writers out
Yeah.
there that don't know, explain how important for them it is to choose someone who is just as passionate as their project as they are. Because some people
Yeah,
just
I
do it for
believe
the
that
money. Some of these illustrators, they'll they'll
that's
get the
true.
check and they'll give you anything. Like, you know what I mean? So
That's
how important is
true.
finding someone
And
that's not
that's exactly it. And I'm not even gonna lie, I did feel that way at one point with him. I felt, because I'm like, we were missing it just so much in the beginning. It wasn't right. Even, I would show my boyfriend, and my boyfriend would be like, no, no. And I was nervous. So it is important, because ultimately I'm like, okay, Tyree, I know that you are not this person. So this is what I need. I really had to really write it out as blatant, as bold as I could. And ultimately we got it. But I think it's important to choose someone that is just as passionate about your project than you, or if not even more, because it'll show in their work. Of
Oh yeah.
course, everybody's not always going to get it right the first time or second or whatever, but you will see their want and their desire to please you in that way, because they're wanting to execute um you know great work. They want to showcase great work, not just for you, but for the project and for what it's going to do in the world. And ultimately this is their stamp on it. So just to I think it's important, just because you want someone that has that respect for their work just as much as they want that, they want to be respected for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss an episode of the Fiction Addiction Podcast by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
So you get to this point now. You write your story.
Uh-huh.
You have your illustrator. You have everything's aligning. Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Walk us through that journey of now going that route in terms of finding the right publisher. In terms of did you do independently? So what
Mm-hmm.
was that journey of your publishing? What is your publishing journey, and explain to us the entire process of going through it from A to B.
Sure. So the publishing, after my illustrations were done, before my illustrations even got done, before I even reached out to Tyree for illustrations, I reached out to one publisher because I knew I wanted to self publish. So I self published the book, and I knew I wanted to go that route to begin with. Just because of, it's more lucrative, it's more beneficial to the author. Um, so I knew I wanted to go that route. And when I did my research, I had found one company that stood out the most and that offered the most benefits. So I thought, so I reached out to that company, and they're like, okay, you need to finish your illustrations before we can even move forward. And they did. At this time, when I reached out to them, they had this publishing package that it did seem that, it was appealing at that time for what I was looking for. And it offered a lot for what the package was worth. So, um, reached out to them. They told me what I needed to do with my artwork, got my artwork finished. By the time my artwork was done, I had stumbled upon another publishing company who I ultimately ended up publishing with, because they
Mm.
offered better turnaround times. They offered cheaper pricing, but they offered more than what the other publishing company that I sought after first offered. So I just really had to kind of weigh my options, and I didn't overwhelm myself with a lot of options at first. I literally started with one. I narrowed it down from a list, but only ended up with one at first because I just felt like they were the ones that really was going to take care of my needs. But then another one came up and at the perfect time because I was ready to go and they were offering great turnaround times that fit my plans for how I wanted to put out everything, and ultimately went with them and everything was out when it needed to be. So it happened at a perfect time.
That's crazy. So like so that first company and transitioning to that second company, looking back now, like how relieved are you that you did the research, which I believe is important. That's very important that you did that because you were able. So how relieved were you that you did the research and took the time and like you said, you were patient?
Extremely, because I was extremely grateful that I waited and I went with the company I did because I not only saved money, I got other benefits and other things that were offered to me within that package that the company I went with offered, that it is more beneficial to my brand and where we are going further down the line. It just makes more sense. And now that I look back, that first company that I had in mind, I wouldn't be, this far along in my journey with Miracle Malcolm if I had have went with that first company. So that really put everything into perspective for me because I even thought about that, while I was working with the company that I went with. I'm like, man, if I would have stuck with that first company, I wouldn't have been nowhere near where I am now with
Right.
Miracle Malcolm. So it's definitely a relief.
So you found your perfect illustrator, you found your perfect publisher, you release your book, release day. How was release day? How'd you do it? Did you do it just the online notification? Did you have a release party? Like how did you do it?
So it did start out as me wanting to have a launch party that ultimately, it was crunch time. Stuff just approached so quickly with everything that it just didn't make sense anymore. So I ultimately ended up just launching online, which I'm extremely grateful for because my online turnout was overly amazing. Like it exceeded expectations. It did extremely well, but I was strategic in choosing my launch date because I launched on November 17th, which is World Prematurity Day. So that was just the perfect day for me to launch the book about premature awareness.
Wow, that's crazy. So now you launched your book. It's out there in Amazon. It's at Barnes and Nobles. You get the notification that your book is available on Walmart. How was that feeling?
Yes. That was awesome because I honestly, and it's so funny how I even found out I was in communication with my publisher again, just figuring out certain updates and what else is next. And she's like, oh, yeah, and it's on Walmart. I was like, oh, okay, so casual. Just was like, oh, yeah, by the way, it's on Walmart. I was like, okay, am I the only one excited for this? So it was awesome. It was kind of like a flyby by the way, but I took it as huge because I'm like, Walmart is a huge retailer. It's the most known retailer. It's one of my favorite stores, especially when it comes to my son. So it was awesome. And, now we have more work to do as far as being in the actual store, but the website is
it's definitely a step in the right
start.
direction. You know what I mean? So, so now you're an author, you're published, your book is out there. How is it in your area in Chicagoland? How is being an author in that land in terms of gaining readers, fellow authors, and networking events, book events? Because I know, like I said, I was talking to in the other interviews, Atlanta is like the mecca. It seems to be the mecca of book events. And oh my God,
I know,
because every time you turn around, there's a children's book event, children's book fair, book festival. How is it in Chicagoland area? How is it up there in terms of books?
I think I am in the beginning stages of trying to figure that out and dive into it even further. We have so much coming up as far as our personal life. We're taking a move and a transition back to the city, and I feel like once I'm really acclimated to my surroundings, I will dive even deeper into becoming a part of different events and trying to see where I would fit in and where it makes sense. And but I have started my research to see, what's out there for me, where I can attach myself to, where I could connect with other people. Um, but I'm super intimidated by it. I'm super nervous. I'm super, anxious because I'm like, oh my goodness, do I need to be at everybody's event? Do I need to do this? But that's the introvert in me that's wanting to cop out. But I'm gonna definitely be strategic to figure
Right.
out what makes the most sense for me because I do believe in just because
Right,
it's there
right,
doesn't mean I have to be there.
right.
So I'm just gonna be strategic and
So I'm gonna take it.
see.
Let me take it back a little bit. In terms of your publishing, what made you want to do? And
Okay.
I know you explained it a little bit. What made you want to do self-publishing rather than going a route of trying to find an agent and querying and trying to get traditionally published? And what, what was
Hmm.
what was that the mindset in making that decision?
Literally all of that, just all of that extraness that comes with that. And prior to me even knowing to research self-publishing, I have actually heard a little bit about it. So I knew at least that much of what I've heard to go into and look and do my own research to see why it makes sense for me to self-publish, which again, I do believe that it's more lucrative. You keep, this project is 100% mine. It's, I'm not selling my rights, or I'm not allowing another company to be the so in charge of my book. It's my book. I self-published, and that just means that I use the service to put everything together for me. They don't own anything, I do. So it's like you keep 100% of what's yours.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Is that idea, or are you that? Is there something you would consider though if the opportunity arose, traditionally
it
publishing?
would it would really have to make sense. At this time, I'm not even thinking that yet, just because I know I don't I'm still at a point where I don't want to, just because I want to get so much off the ground still with Miracle Malcolm. But you're right, if the opportunity came, I was approached with um a certain proposition, a certain, proposal, I would be okay with at least hearing them out and seeing if it makes sense.
Right. So just by this interview, I
Uh-huh.
noticed something
Okay.
about you.
Okay.
So, which is very interesting, and
Okay.
honestly, I think it's very important. You know what I mean? And it's
Okay.
crazy how the interview brings that out. There are writers out there who are just writing. Um,
Yeah.
you seem to know the one thing about you. You seem to know your brand. You know
Yes, I
exactly
do.
what you want. You know exactly where
Yes.
you wanted to go. You know exactly what you
Mhm.
wanted to stand for.
Yep.
Reach out to, and you're firm on it. You know what I mean? Because 9 times out of 10,
Yes.
most authors, oh yeah, I take it. But you know your brand. You're like, yeah, whatever. Them companies can come with the offers, but if it ain't on my
Exactly.
terms, yeah. So break that down for those writers out there who have the passion, who have the talent, but it seems like
Mhm.
your experience, your life experience, the modeling, everything has made you understand what your brand was, made you understand what you want out of the business,
That's
what you want
it.
out of life. Break that down
Yes.
to the writers who don't have that type of experience you have, and explain to them why it is important to you that it should be important to them
Right.
about knowing their brand.
Right. That's just it. You hit it on the head. I think my life experiences, me modeling for 9 years, me meeting certain individuals, me learning myself, knowing what I want. So it trial and error. You grow to a point. We still have growing to do, but you reach a certain point where you're like, okay, this is it. This is what I want. This is what it'll be, because this is for the betterment of my life, but not only my life, this is the betterment of my child, the people around me, and everybody we come in contact with. So like-mindedness, if I want people to kind of have that same energy, you got to put out there what you want to attract. And if you want to attract success, you got to act it. You got to be it. You got to, embody every bit of what you're wanting to put out there and attract back in return. So I think, when it comes down to it, if that's what you want, you know what you want, um, what's needed to go get it, you have to position yourself. Like I've mentioned earlier in our interview, that I know I'm envisioning my end result, my potential person. So in order to be her, I have to push
Mm,
myself. I have to level up in all areas. I have to hold myself accountable. I have to be this person on purpose. Sometimes it's hard, but to be something on purpose means you have to force it in a way. You have to be it um unapologetically. You have to continue to work at being this person so much that now you're this person because this is who you're putting out to the universe. This is who the universe is sending back to you. And, so it's just being this person on purpose, who you want to be, where you want your brand to be. And it's important because it's your voice, it's your way, it's your mark on the world. It's your way to showcase what you are, who you are to the world. And what better way when it's not, when it's without conditions, when it's without, oh, I'll be this as long as, no, I'm going to be this because this is who I am.
Perfect. So now, there is another group of writers out there. Whether they're
Yeah.
indecisive about whether they want to get into this business, whether they want to put themselves out there, tap into that vulnerability and put themselves out there, put their stories out there, but they have a story just like you had a story that could change lives, that could bring people together.
Right.
They have an idea.
Right.
They didn't put the pen to the paper yet. They have an idea. They want to share. They know they want to share their story, but they have a little bit of reluctancy. What advice would you give them right now?
Honestly, just to start, and that's the advice I was given, because it is overwhelming at first. It is intimidating at first when all you have is an idea and you're not even sure. Even if you research, you're not even sure what you're researching. Because I've been there. I was even there at several moments with Miracle Malcolm where I wrote it, but I'm like, okay, just because I Googled a company, what do I do now? And just getting the advice and being influenced by a lot of the moms that I follow, even though I have not even met them, I'm influenced by their journey because I look back on their pages or I read through their stories and their bios, and I connect with them through their DMs and we talk, and they're just like, I literally just started with this, or I just started last year and I'm already at this point. So it's like, just start, and you'll look up next year
Mm,
and you'll be like, man, I just started this and I'm already here. And for myself, I just started in November and I'm already here. So it's just literally just starting at wherever, however, just start and just execute. Like execution is huge. It's extremely huge. So if you just have an idea, like I mentioned before, that intellectual property, that's golden. But if it's nothing, if it's just an idea, so that execution is real, that push through is real. The legwork behind it, all of that is just real as long as you're moving your feet constantly, and consistency is key.
mm. So tell me, what was your greatest moment as a writer?
Honestly, literally this moment is probably the monumental, but my greatest moment was seeing my potential when I wrote my first screenplay. That was my moment of whoa. Like, because you finish it, and when I finished, I was like, there is no way, I just did this, and I did it because I was that inspired, just like I did with this book. I was that inspired by my son, by what we went through. So I think first the screenplay because it allowed me to reach a peak of my talent that I never even knew I had. And now this to be at this point, my first published book, my first introduction as an author, this is a next level of you know, whoa, it's like an aha moment because it allowed me to see yet again, where my talents could take me. So I think this would definitely be the second.
So what is your greatest moment as a mother?
As a mother, that's the first question that you have me thinking. My greatest moment as a mother. Wow. Hmm. I would have to say, wow. I don't know if I have a greatest moment, like a moment that sticks out the most. I think what I can appreciate is how you don't realize the strength that you have. So
Mm,
honestly, I take that back. I think getting through the healing myself, really, honestly, writing the book, healing myself, being a stay-at-home mom, tackling certain things, just being that quote unquote superwoman. You look back and you have to pay homage to yourself.
mm-hmm.
You have to celebrate those small beginnings and say, you got through this. You're getting through this. You did this while doing this, while mothering, while healing, while doing this. You got through this, So I think just the journey, the process, that whole duration. I was a stay-at-home mom for 11 months. So that whole 11 months, I think I will acknowledge and say that those moments were my greatest because it allowed me to heal and start my healing, write my book, bond with my child, and see my strengths, because I'm a first time mom and just even dealing with that in itself, So all of those moments within that 11 months really allowed me to see and know what I was capable of as a mother.
So your life.
Hmm.
You live, I would say, you live a life, just hearing everything. You live a life that a lot of people couldn't handle. You know what I mean? You sit back and think about it, like you say, even sitting back, like you said, sitting back and think about just the things you have accomplished as a mother.
Hmm.
Just even some of the things you have accomplished as a woman. You know what I mean? So you're a writer, you're a mother,
Yeah.
you're juggling a relationship, you're juggling work, you're juggling a business, a
Right.
brand, like all those things. How do you find
Yes,
balance
Jesus.
for it all? Because like I said, all that stuff, a lot of people can't handle that. You know what I mean? They can't handle doing all these things at once. Like you said, you're
Yes.
moving, you're doing. How do you balance it all to keep yourself on track? If all those things.
Man, you just allowed me to you really allowed me to put it all in a perspective again. But it you handle it as it comes, and I think because I am someone who could get overwhelmed easily and get super caught up in the emotion of it because that's just, that's my makeup. But when it happens, because I have an accountability partner, I have to hold true to, forcing myself to grow and in the midst of it I'm growing through it all, through the transitions, through the motherhood, and through the juggling work and light and mom life, and it's all a learning moment. It's all a moment that I take in every day and I have to literally take it as it comes. It's not as overwhelming now as it was when it first began, but because now I feel like I have such a grasp on it, and it's just because of the routineness of it. It's just because of the everyday of it that it gets easier. But right away, for anyone starting off with it, yeah, you're gonna just have to take it for what it is at that moment, live through it, get through it, build, grow, learn, repeat, So it's like a
Oh yeah.
constant cycle of trial and error until you get to a point where it's second nature. And I think that's where I am now. It's gotten to be so second nature, so a part of my life now, even incorporating the Miracle Malcolm brand, because I've been used to doing this, adding something on, whether it was modeling or whatever the case, a side hustle, whatever. I was used to it. This was just another hat on top of another one. So I was already in motion in the groove of being used to this type of life. that it was an easy transition. It wasn't challenging moments, but the whole idea of it wasn't challenging.
Mm. So Miracle Malcolm, your debut book.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important for children literacy and for literacy in general? Why is this book? What separates this book from Cat in the Hat, Green Eggs and Ham? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
What separates this book?
Right. The not to say, because all of those educate, they seriously do, they all educate, but because this raises a whole nother level of awareness and education, and it's because it will be a series, it will touch on just certain facts and health, and really dive into to those points that I think that's what sets it apart. That's what makes it different. It's not your normal, ordinary, cute children's book. It's a book that it's gonna be cute by default, but it's it's gonna teach you. It's gonna really go there with you regarding a topic that's not talked about, And I think because I'm taking that chance of going there, that risk, that including a lot of vulnerability and transparency in it, but keeping it kid friendly. I'm doing all of that in this book, and it's just, I think that's what's going to set it apart from your average book.
So the Miracle Malcolm brand, where is it going? What is the future for Miracle Malcolm? Where do you see you going with this?
Yes. So we have so many different projects coming up. As I mentioned, it will be a series. That's a for sure. It'll be a series. We have products dropping. I'm hoping by the summer of 2020, another product being released. Apparel, commercials. Like, we really have a whole cartoon. It's a whole plan for Miracle Malcolm. So I do see it transitioning from it being a book to an actual brand, because I'm building the brand. So eventually, under that umbrella will be multiple products, and my end result, like looking down years from now, having it be a foundation, a full on foundation of, like, a March of Dimes, and like these organizations that are the housing and the go-tos and the foundations for premature awareness. That's where I see Miracle Malcolm.
That was dope.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Now we're going to real seriously, like because people, it's important to have, like I said, you're a person, just based off the interview, you're a person that's every writer, and I don't want your DMs to blow up now, but every writer should take a second to contact and just pick your brain a little bit, because you have the vision. You know what I mean? That's important. That's just as important of having the talent. You know what I mean? But like I said, I don't like, you know what I mean? That's kind of like mentorship, and you get paid for that. So, so I don't know, but it's like I said,
you're diving into a whole nother
just to add something else to your plate.
I know.
But I think that's important of just knowing your brand, where you want to take it, and having the vision for it. Just hearing that is refreshing, because people can, I don't know, even someone hearing this that say, oh, we need a foundation like that. Now they know where to go, where the grassroots can start. You know what I mean? And who can start it and things like that.
Right.
But that's definitely important. But we are about to jump into the Believe It or Not section of the show. This is the section where I got 3 facts from you, 3 facts about you. 2 of them are true, 1 of them is false. I get 1 question to ask for each fact to guess, to see which one is not true. So the first fact was that you were Jet Beauty of the Week in 2015. The second fact, you toured with a gospel singer and artist Fred Hampton and his team. You were a promotional model for an apparel company and provided his shirts during the tour. And the third one is you're a ghostwriter for several children's books prior to finally releasing your own. Interesting.
Hmm.
Cause all of them sound like it could be true.
Right?
Shoot. Jet Beauty of the Week 2015. Trying to think of a question. 2015. Do you have that copy of the magazine that you ran?
So when I did that, when I worked and did that and had that opportunity, it was for the digital release because as people are aware, Jet Beauty was a magazine that came in the mail, and it was a little cute little magazine. But when I had the opportunity to become and be a part of that whole transition, it was for the digital. So it was me and two other girls. We really started that next wave of Jet Beauty of the Week by being digital. We were the first models to start the digital wave of Jet Beauty of the Week.
Damn. I need another question. I can't. All right. Number 2, you toured with Fred Hampton and his team. What cities did y'all go to on the tour?
So we went to Jacksonville, Florida. We went to Louisiana. Where else did we go? We went to Ohio. Where else did we go? It was so many. It was so long ago too, but we those are like the most memorable ones, at least for me, especially Louisiana. It was a lot of those cities were my first time going to, of course. Oh, and South Carolina. South Carolina was memorable as well. So we did a lot of traveling actually, but those were more memorable, I guess. So that's probably why they stick
Dang.
out the most.
A ghostwriter for several children's books prior to releasing your own. How those writers get in contact with you?
So they found me just through social media, and just kind of through word of mouth too. It was just from people that I stumbled upon in my modeling career, and people that just knew in my circle that knew I had a love for writing, and just wanted to use me for their creative writing services because they knew that it came easy to me. So just word of mouth and through social media, and it was always an intimate circle. It wasn't never really um just random people. It was just people that knew of me.
Damn. um I'm gonna go with based on my assumption of your brand and stuff like that.
Right.
Cause you said you ain't signing with no damn traditional if it ain't right. So I damn sure think you ain't gonna write for nobody if it ain't in your brand.
That's so true.
I'm gonna go with number 3. So that's right.
Yep, that's good. Yeah, so that one is a lie.
So break it. So now we got to talk about the other 2. That Jet Beauty. How the
Okay.
heck did that come along?
Man, it was so random. It really was. I was approached by a photographer because I had worked with over 20 photographers since my modeling career, from start to finish, over 20 photographers. And one of the photographers that I worked with once, he just, emailed me and like, hey, it started off super casual. He didn't even mention Jet Beauty until I got there. So he's like, hey, could you come out and do a shoot with me? And it'll be other models. And I'm like, okay, is it a paid shoot, or just what are the terms? And he's just like, oh, it's just TFP, could you come out and do this? And I think I honestly just did it because I had nothing else to do. Like, I just wanted to do it. And I'm glad I did because when I got there, a whole camera, camera crew and makeup artist, and the makeup artist actually ended up being someone who I would then go on to work with down the line. And
Damn.
so, it just was more than what I thought it was before I got there. When I got there, they're like, okay, sign this. I'm like, what am I signing?
Right.
And they're like, well, this is for Jet Beauty. This is for Jet Beauty of the Week. You three models will be the launch of our digital magazine. And I was like, okay,
That's
let's
crazy.
do this. So,
And that sounded like a lie too. You said that you was like, oh yeah, we were the first of the digital. I'm like, did they ever go? I'm like,
yep, They went digital, and we were the first three models. Me, Nicole, and I forget the other model's name. But it was
crazy.
three of us. We launched their digital magazine. So look it up. Google me.
That's crazy.
I don't like my picture, but look it up.
Look it up anyway.
Look it up anyway. I was there.
So the Fred Hammond tour, how did that happen?
So that happened with me. So it started out with me working with this husband and wife team. She had an apparel company called Pretty Girls for Christ. So I worked several events with her, Black Women's Expo. We did the World Hair Show in Atlanta. So I had went to several events with them prior to them extending the offer to go on tour with Fred Hammond for it was supposed to be a 60, I want to say it was a 60 city tour, if I'm not mistaken, if I can remember all of that correctly. But honestly, the way my mind is right now, I couldn't even tell you half of them. But it's super rewarding experience. I actually didn't even finish the tour because other personal life experiences happened, and I cut the tour short, came home, and got back to life. But for the cities that I went to, the time that I was there, super rewarding, interacted with some amazing people. And just to travel alone, being able to travel and get out of the norm was rewarding also.
So speaking of the last fact, would you ever ghostwrite for somebody?
No.
Oh, snap. Now.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. That's just not something that I would do. Because I think it just has to be so much deeper than that. It has to be like I literally have to see your project as mine. And and it's just not to sound selfish or whatever. I just know my headspace. I know how I work creatively. And I just don't think I could wholeheartedly put my all into another person's project. And I just hope that doesn't sound horrible. But I just I'm never going to shoot down anything, because if somebody extended an offer to write something for them in a different style, because I know I've wrote things for other reasons,
right.
But it just would have to be like I said before, it would have to make sense
right.
for me to see and even entertain the thought of it.
You said you wouldn't even write for yourself if it didn't have a purpose. It seemed like you write with a purpose.
Right? Yeah, it's like I have to be driven. I have to be so inspired. Otherwise, I can't produce good work I can't pull from nothing. And I think that's what it'll ultimately end up being, pulling from an empty vessel and pulling from a blank canvas, really, because I don't have anything to pull from to keep me going. So I need something to keep me fueled in order to finish a project, and not just start it, but to actually finish it and allow it to be a success like the book. And, so yeah, I just have to.
So do you see yourself writing anything outside of the Miracle Malcom series, like a poetry book or anything like that?
I'm not sure. Possibly. I actually think I will be open to that, because I do know I would be okay with writing other things for moms and other things for parents, and possibly just like a self-biography or whatever. So yeah, I think I would at some point, on the side or whatever, as life continues, I think I will be open to writing something other than Miracle Malcom.
That's dope. All right. I appreciate you so much for this dope interview, sharing your story.
Thank you.
Shout out to you. Shout out to your family. Shout out to Malcom. Like I said, appreciate your story.
Right?
Appreciate you writing this type of book. Appreciate you shining some light on premature births and bringing some awareness within that story just to share with everybody else. So let everybody know where they can get in contact with you, where they can find the book. I just know it released digitally, so shout out to that as well.
Yeah,
so tell everybody where they can find all the books and to contact you.
Perfect. So thank you again for the opportunity. Miracle Malcom is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walmart's website. It's available digitally on your iPad and your phones and your ebooks. We have plans to be in other retailers that'll be announced, when it's appropriate. And I'm available at bookings.arielsimmons@gmail.com for, any inquiries regarding my projects or, just wanting to reach out to touch base and follow up. Instagram as well at Ariel with 2 L's Simmons. And then Miracle Malcom, he's available Miracle X Malcom on his page. So yes, follow us and we will be doing our best to keep everyone as updated on everything and being as transparent throughout the whole process.
Definitely. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. You are appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Fiction Addiction Podcast. Make sure you visit fictionaddictionpodcast.com for links on everything we talked about today, as well as awesome resources, additional tips, and fiction addiction merchandise.